Good day, my menopausal friends. Welcome to Menopause Taylor University, where I teach you everything you need to know in order to make sense of all things having to do with menopause. You have joined me for video number 485. It's the third video in the long segment on your genital symptoms of menopause. The first video explained the long list of reasons you should focus more on your dry menopausal genitalia than on your hot menopausal body. The second video introduced you to the new name for all the genital symptoms of menopause. That new name is genitourinary syndrome of menopause. It includes all the stuff that happens to your female genitalia. But when it comes to your female genitalia, you have two different categories of genital organs, reproductive organs and sexual organs, and they are not one and the same. And you need to know the differences. So this video will explain the differences between your reproductive organs and your sexual organs. And the reason you need this tutorial is because menopause causes symptoms for your sexual organs, but not for your reproductive organs. So when it comes to symptoms, you need to know what's happening, where it's happening, and why it's happening. In my book, you will find that chapters 22, 23, and 25 address the organs we'll discuss today. But as usual, we'll get a much more detailed and much more visual lesson here on YouTube. So let's completely separate your reproductive organs from your sexual organs. And we'll start with your reproductive organs, about which I've already taught you quite a bit. What we want to do is compare and contrast the effect of menopause on your reproductive organs versus your sexual organs. So here's a review. You've seen my homemade model for your reproductive tract many, many times. Let's go through and designate the effect that menopause has on each anatomical structure. Starting with your ovaries. Your ovaries, which are the walnuts, are an egg factory and a hormone factory. At menopause, both the egg and the hormone factories go out of business. So, things change a bit. When they go out of business, your ovaries change quite a bit. They go from big, plump walnuts to shriveled up raisins. Your ovaries literally dry up and shrivel like dead little raisins. This drying up and shriveling of your ovaries is the very definition of postmenopause, and it's why this entire menopause education exists in the first place. Your fallopian tubes, which are the green beans, are nothing but highways for egg and sperm to meet. Well, they don't change at menopause. And the reason they don't change at menopause is because hormones have no effect on them. So the highway and the hormones have nothing at all to do with one another. Your uterus here is nothing but a baby carriage. But in order to function as a baby carriage, it has to respond to both estrogen and progesterone. So it responds to estrogen and progesterone throughout your entire reproductive life. This is a menstrual cycle. And every menstrual cycle you have has two parts. Estrogen rises in the first half of your cycle. Well, estrogen makes the lining in your uterus get thick, like this. You can think of the lining in your uterus as grass. Well, estrogen is like fertilizer for the grass. It makes the grass grow. Then, in the second half of your cycle, your progesterone rises. Well, progesterone makes the lining in your uterus stay thick, and that thick lining is a cushion. But remember that progesterone is the hormone in support of pregnancy. So progesterone's only job is to keep the cushion in the baby carriage for a baby should you get pregnant. Well, if you do not get pregnant, progesterone says, well, I have nothing to do here, so I'm out of here. And that's when progesterone disappears. And since there's no need for a cushion in the baby carriage if there's no baby, progesterone takes the thick inner uterine lining with it. And that's what you experience as your period. So you can think of progesterone as a lawnmower. Lawnmower for the grass. It cuts the grass. So this means that over the course of your premenopausal reproductive life, your uterus alternates between a thick inner uterine lining in response to estrogen and a thin inner uterine lining in response to progesterone if you don't get pregnant. At menopause, if you take HRT, your uterus continues to respond to these two hormones in the very same way. A cyclic HRT regimen causes your uterine lining to alternate between thick and thin. A continuous HRT regimen causes your uterine lining to remain thin all the time because both the fertilizer and the lawnmower are there at the same time, all the time. If you don't take HRT, your inner uterine lining should just stop reacting altogether, and in essence, it sort of basically just dries up. Your cervix is nothing but a door to your uterus. So this is the cervix here. It is the door. Now, your cervix is shaped much like a bagel. And your uterine door has remained closed most of the time during your reproductive life. It has opened to let sperm in, babies out, and periods out. Well, at menopause, it has nothing to do. The only normal role it has at menopause is letting blood out at the expected time if you take HRT on a cyclic regimen. Any other bleeding warrants evaluation. And that does it for your 4 reproductive organs. There are just 4. Your ovaries, your fallopian tubes, your uterus, and your cervix. Now, I'm going to say something that sounds very basic, and it is. But I've discovered that it is very common for people to overlook very basic things. So here goes. Your reproductive organs have no function once you are finished with your reproductive phase of life. So while these reproductive organs have important functions before you become postmenopausal, they cease to have any function whatsoever once you become postmenopausal. And none of these reproductive organs typically produces any symptoms at the time of postmenopause unless they are diseased in some way. They should all just be quiet because they're all supposed to be dead. Your sexual organs, however, are a whole different story. They continue to serve the same functions after menopause that they served before menopause. And they produce a wide range of symptoms once you become postmenopausal. This is why it is so important for you to learn about your sexual organs and how they manifest symptoms of estrogen deficiency at postmenopause. So, if I add your sexual organs to our chopping board model of reproductive organs, we will have the following. We will have this for your vagina. We will have this for your clitoris. And we will have, I need both hands for this. I've got to manipulate a little bit here. We will have this for your vulva. So, your sexual organs look a whole lot like this. Isn't it pretty? These are the parts of your genital anatomy that you can actually see. Your vulva, your vagina, your clitoris, and there's your urethra. On this model here, you can see that all of your reproductive organs are up here. They occupy the higher portions of your female genital tract because this is a woman lying down, this is a woman standing up. Standing up, they're all higher. But there's all of this stuff down here and all this stuff down here. Those are your sexual organs. Your sexual organs include your vagina, your clitoris, and your vulva. And for purposes of menopause, they also include your urethra, merely by virtue of its location rather than by virtue of its function. Here's the vulva, here's the vagina, here's your clitoris, but your urethra's right in the middle of all of your sexual organs, so it gets included in the categorization scheme. So we can add a urethra to our model of sexual organs here. We're just going to take this little tiny yellow blob and place it right here as a urethra. So now you've got all those structures on our model. Now, your vagina functions as a receptacle for sexual intercourse. Of all your reproductive and sexual organs, your vagina is the most multi-purpose. It serves some reproductive functions and some sexual functions. In the context of sexual functions, your vagina exists for purposes of sexual activity. In the context of reproductive functions, it serves as a conduit for the exit of blood from your uterus and the exit of a baby from your uterus too. Your clitoris has only one function: sexual pleasure. In other words, orgasm. It has no other role. Your clitoris is your organ of orgasm, not your vagina. In fact, your clitoris is the only human anatomical structure that exists solely for the purpose of pleasure. I will teach you a lot more about this when we get to the tutorial on orgasm specifically. That will be video number 504 many weeks from now. Oddly, right smack dab in the middle of your sexual organs sits the opening to your urethra. So guess what? It is included among what we call sexual organs. It is included among the genital symptoms of menopause because it is affected by becoming postmenopausal just like all your other sexual organs. Your urethra functions to let urine out of your body, and it just so happens to be in the same neighborhood as all your other sexual organs. So it sits right there, and on this model, it sits right there. Your urethra does not have a specific direct sexual role, but it is dependent on estrogen. And it sits right in the middle of all these other sexual organs, and so it manifests symptoms that are due solely to post-menopause. Now, your vulva, which is this big white mass here, functions to protect your sexual organs. It houses all these other sexual organs. You can see it better here. So it houses all the organs, including the vagina, the clitoris, the urethra, all of them. So it's very important for you to know about each and every one of these sexual organs. Knowing about them enables you to prevent, recognize, and alleviate the symptoms they create at the time of postmenopause. I urge you to get familiar with your sexual genitalia. I mean, it's all right there where you can see it. Sure, you might need to use a mirror, but you deserve to know about all these structures. Knowing about them will empower you to take control of the symptoms that are due to your dry menopausal genitalia. Empowerment is what this education is all about. So the objective of this particular tutorial is to separate your female anatomy into two separate categories, reproductive and sexual. You need to distinguish your reproductive organs from your sexual organs. I guess you can think of these two different categories of your female organs as the upper female genital tract and the lower female genital tract. The upper tract is your reproductive genital tract. It consists of the organs that are on the inside of your body. They include your ovaries, fallopian tubes, uterus, and cervix. The lower tract is your sexual genital tract. It includes the organs that are on or accessible from the outside of your body. They include your vagina, your clitoris, the opening to your urethra, and your vulva. So you can distinguish them by thinking of them as higher versus lower, or by thinking of them as inner versus outer. If we create a chart depicting what I've taught you thus far, it looks like this. Here you can see that I've designated the first column as the category of genital organs, and there are only two, reproductive and sexual. In the second column, I've designated how they differ as to location. Your reproductive organs are high and inside, whereas your sexual organs are low and outside. In the third column, I've listed the individual organs. The fourth column designates the function of each organ before menopause. And the fifth column designates the function of each organ after menopause. As you'll discover in future videos, all your sexual organs produce symptoms at the time of postmenopause, and there are loads and loads of symptoms that come from them. The chart is available via the link in the description box as well as at menopausetailor.me, and it's not a very technical chart, but we will build on it as we progress through this unit. Now, why in the world would you have symptoms in your lower sexual genital tract at the time of postmenopause? Well, it turns out that all your lower genital tract organs that are sexual organs are completely dependent on estradiol. That's right. Your vagina, clitoris, urethra, and vulva are heavily dependent on estradiol. Progesterone has no effect on any of them, but they all love estradiol. And without estradiol, they all suffer. That's why I'm addressing the symptoms of your dry menopausal genitalia before addressing the symptoms of your hot menopausal body. You will be shocked to discover just how many changes these sexual organs undergo in the absence of estradiol. Unfortunately, most women and most doctors are unaware of the wide-ranging effects of estradiol deficiency on these lower genital tract sexual organs. So women suffer needlessly. Now, you may have noticed that I have referred to your genital symptoms as symptoms of your dry postmenopausal genitalia. Why do you suppose I use the term dry? Well, one of the most basic things about a real education is that you learn principles that form the foundation for the entire education. And way back in video number 141, I taught you about all the things that dry up at postmenopause. Recall what happens to your ovaries when you reach postmenopause. They dry up and shrivel. Why? Because they are dependent on estradiol. Well, now you have a whole collection of lower genital tract sexual organs that are all completely dependent on estradiol too. So what's going to happen to them when your estradiol factory closes down? They're all going to dry up. The problem is that different sexual organs present different symptoms when they dry up. And you have to know what those symptoms are in order to prevent, recognize, or alleviate them. And the bigger problem is that most women and most physicians do not know all the symptoms of dry sexual genitalia. They mislabel them as a multitude of other things that are inaccurate, and they try to manage them in all sorts of ways that are completely futile. By learning about your sexual organs and separating them from your reproductive organs, you will be able to prevent, recognize, and alleviate the symptoms of your dry postmenopausal genitalia. That's empowerment. So your summary for today is this. Your upper, inner reproductive organs include your ovaries, your fallopian tubes, your uterus, and your cervix. Your lower, outer sexual organs include your vagina, your clitoris, your urethra, and your vulva. Menopause produces symptoms of your lower, outer sexual organs that are entirely due to estradiol deficiency. In essence, your sexual organs dry up because they are all completely dependent on estradiol. Alrighty, next week we will continue with anatomy and I will present embryology. In other words, I'll teach you how we all start out the same as far as gender is concerned and what happens to make you either male or female. Please come back for that video because I have some fun creative props that I made all by myself. In the meantime, go to menopausetailor.me to schedule a consultation so that I can tailor everything specifically to you. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe here to this YouTube channel and to my newsletters. You'll enjoy my newsletter messages and you'll learn about special promotions and things of that nature. And I'm all over social media, so please find me there too. I will see you in a week. Bye, my dears.